or not, Chapter 7 of our podcast series focusing on nurses in the public sector. And Dominic, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again.
Hey, Jeff. Good to hear from you. Thanks for inviting me back.
Thought we had a great session on group benefits last week. For those of you that didn't attend that session, you need to catch it. Great information. And as we closed out last week, we led into the conversation today, which I think is very important, and that is beneficiary arrangements. We're going to use the federal market as an example here, but for those of you in the state and local, this pertains to each one of these benefits that you need to review at state and local levels also. But making sure your beneficiary arrangements are coordinated and updated is very important. And so Dominic and I are going to dive into that today. So let's start with the four different areas of beneficiary arrangements and why that's confusing for the employee. So let's give an overview and then we'll get into each one of them individually.
Yeah, so let me just start by saying, Jeff, that you're right. Beneficiary forms are just something that's overlooked and just not paid very much attention to by federal, state, and municipal employees. And, the reason being is because it's just something we don't think about. We think about our benefits, we think about our retirement accounts and where they're invested in. But this is something that people set up, 10, 15, 20 years or more ago, and they just don't think about having to relook at those. So we always try to bring it top of mind for people. And the four benefits in the federal employment sector that affect your beneficiary forms are your TSP, of course, your thrift savings plan, your federally life insurance, your FERS annuity, and any sick leave or annual leave that you've accumulated over time. That's something that lots of people just totally forget about because they forget that, God forbid, hey, something happens to me and I've got 9 months or 12 months or 18 months of sick leave and annual leave built up. Well, if you don't have a beneficiary for that, then that's going to, probably back into the government coffers. And that's not good, right, Jeff?
No, and you mentioned this is where I see a lot of times. So again, we're using the federal benefits as an example, but if you're at a state and local level, you need to check your 403B, your 401k. That's equivalent to the thrift savings plan at the federal level. The FERS is the federal pension system, but you need to check your pension because there's a death benefit there. And I think that's something that a lot of federal employees I know that we deal with, they miss that one a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you mentioned sick leave and annual leave, which I didn't even know until going through these podcast series with advisors such as yourself that even was there was a beneficiary designation even attached to those.
Well, there is, and that could result in a huge chunk of change when somebody retires and they've built up many months or even a year or more of sick and annual leave. Gosh, they could get a check way into the thousands of dollars. And if you pass away and you leave that on the table, like I said, it's probably going back in Uncle Sam's pocket.
Now, let's say somebody has a will. This is confusing to people because it's something like you said, they don't even think about it. You sign up. I've seen people that have gone through a divorce, still have their children they still have guardians for their children, and that can create a big mess. But the will itself doesn't supersede any of that. So just because you have a will doesn't mean that those are legal documents with the beneficiary arrangements of those different benefits, correct?
That is correct. I want to be very cautious and to state that I'm not an estate planning attorney, nor am I here to give legal advice. But regardless, if you have a will or you die intestate, meaning you don't have a will, you really, really need to have your beneficiaries of all four of these areas set, solidly so that there's no question if you should pass away. And Jeff, you actually reminded me of a story that I heard from a colleague a couple of years back, that this federal employee, this registered nurse federal employee, she got ill, and unexpectedly she passed away about a week or two after she got an illness. And couple weeks, couple of months or whatever after the situation, her husband went to, collect all the information from HR, and lo and behold, he looks at her policy, her FEGLI policy, and she had all the options. So it was a lot of money. It wasn't just basic life. It was option A and option B. It was a couple $100,000. And sure enough, she never changed her beneficiary when she divorced her husband and married her new husband. And I don't have to tell you who got the benefit, the death benefit from her
Jeez.
policy when she passed away.
Wow.
It was tragic.
And that happens a lot more than you think it does.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I mean, we talk to people every day who just, sort of leave these things to chance. And, folks, I really encourage you, you should look at this at least once a year, and go over your leave and earning statement with a professional, a federal employee benefits counselor like myself, just to make sure that you're not overpaying for things, or there's things on there that you've already paid back, like TSP loans that they're still billing you for, or, tax liens I've seen. It's horrendous. Anyway, don't want to get too far off topic there, Jeff.
No, but there's also a checklist that can be found on OPM for federal employees, and state and local. I'm sure you have it with your. You can ask your HR benefits officer. There is a pre-retirement checklist that, if you would like, as a federal nurse out there, at the end here, we'll give you out the information and we'll send it to you. So you don't have to go digging through OPM. It's, that can be, you can spend a lot of time trying to find what you need there, but we have it. And what that does is it goes through a checklist of things you should be reviewing 5 years to retirement, 3 years to retirement, or within 1 year of retirement, help remind you of what you need to make sure you update. And that might be a catch-all. You said, Dominic, if there's a loan out on their TSP, if they haven't reviewed their beneficiary arrangements, if they haven't reviewed their Social Security statements, all that. But that's something that you also offer in the consultations you do, correct?
Yep, absolutely. We prepare people for retirement all the time, and we use that same list to make sure that all their ducks are in a row, not 6 days or even 6 weeks, but 6 months to a year before they're ready to retire, just to make sure they're prepared.
So how, number one, I want to make sure that we're clear that a consultation like that with Dominic's firm is, the initial consultation is of no cost. So there's no harm in reaching out to have that assessment completed, because I was talking to another advisor this week that one of their, and you and I have addressed this in previous sessions, one of their clients was ready to retire and didn't make adjustments in their TSP, and now they've had to delay their retirement a little bit because now they're playing catch up again with the amount of money and trying to catch up. You don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, certainly not the first time I heard that story, Jeff. There was a lot of that happening in 2009, in the
Yeah.
last recession. So yeah.
Well, and then this year, you take a look, 2020, we had that big dip and now we've recovered, but it's very thin ice. So
Yes.
all that needs to be addressed, and you need to do it before you've set that date, or you've already filled out the forms and made the commitments. Because once you go on the other side of retirement, there's no coming back. And so that's what Dominic does.
And Jeff,
So,
can I just add one more quick thing?
sure.
I encourage everyone who's listening to this to go get a will. just get a will, because you do not want to die without a will, and mainly because you don't want to have your estate go through probate, whether your estate's $100,000 or $10 million. Going through probate, you're subject to anywhere from 6 months minimum to as long as 3 years or more of having your estate tied up. You're subject to probate taxes. You're subject to probate court costs and fees and attorney's fees. You want to avoid that, and the best way to avoid it is just get a will, hire an attorney, or go to LegalZoom.com or
That's
any of
great.
the any of those law sites, and just for
Get
as
it
little as a
done.
few $100 you can get it.
Yeah, that's very important. I think it goes overlooked. And again, we're not, we're not attorneys, and you need to get professional advice when it comes to that. But education's power, and you need to do it. You need to update it. I can't tell you how many times, 10, 15 years ago, somebody may have had their will done and they still have guardians on their kids. That you gotta take proactive steps. And that again leads into making sure your qualified plan is updated, beneficiaries, TSP, federal, 401k, 457, 403b, for state and local employees, your group life insurance, as well as, and we should address this, any individual insurance plans you have out there. I mean, you might have an old policy from 15 years ago that you've forgotten about. Make sure all those beneficiaries are coordinated together and tied into the will planning, because it all needs to go together. Save those are going to be responsible for your estate a lot of time and energy and stress. Also, it's peace of mind that that all the hard work you put in is going to go to the right place. And as Dominic mentioned, pension, you need to update your beneficiaries for your pension system, as well as sick leave and annual leave. That was a key one, Dominic. Again, I wasn't aware of the last two again, but they're very important.
Yeah,
So, all right, for those of you out there that would like to reach out to Dominic, could you share your website with everybody?
sure. It's CaiatiFinancial.com. It's spelled CAIATI financial.com.
And you can also go to two websites that provide educational information for each of you out there. Fedchecklist.com for federal employees. Download a complimentary workbook, retirement workbook and budget. You can also put questions and comments on there that we'll get to Dominic regarding your retirement beneficiary arrangements, benefits. You can also set a consultation with his firm there. And if you're a state and local employee, go to publicpensionchecklist.com. You can get a complimentary pension report, grade of how your pension system's doing. You may be surprised. And with this crazy year and cuts, understanding the health of your pension is probably as important as it's ever been. So get a report there, and you can also put questions and comments and schedule a meeting with Dominic. So, all right, great information, Dominic. That's very important. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Jeff. It's always a pleasure sharing this with the public, for sure.
Okay, so let me hand out the 800 number, 888-545-8840. If you have questions, reach out to us directly. And what do we have coming up next week?
Let's see. Next week on the hit parade, surviving spouse benefits.
Okay, very important subject. It's overlooked again as we start to get into the estate planning portion of our episodes. Make sure you join us next week for that. So this concludes our session. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you next week.